Okay, I am Valerie Novaes. I am 1 week into my job at DWSD, so bear with me. Although in my former life, I was on the consultant side, heavily involved in the drainage program, so this is nothing new to me. I wanted to give you the. Turn it back up. Okay. I wanted to give you kind of the overall context of where DWSD is at, where we are coming from, our goals, kind of the why, the how, and then the drainage program. I am in the stormwater management group at DWSD, which is spearheaded by Lisa Wallach. So, do I have a clicker or?
I'm your clicker.
You're my clicker? Okay. So you saw the video, puts it kind of into context. Does everyone know what a combined sewer system is? No, okay. So, I like to say it like this. We have stormwater, rain and snowmelt that falls, runs off our hard surfaces into the same pipe where this is a technical term, where our poop goes. They all combine into one pipe that goes to the treatment plant. It is treated, which has a cost. So it's conveyed, collected, and treated. When it rains really hard, the system can't handle that, and the combined water with the stormwater and our sewage is either diverted to the rivers or a combined sewer overflow treatment facility. So there's $1.5 billion that has gone into treatment facilities that are already in the ground, and there's a remainder of the city that is left to treat, which is the Upper West Side of Detroit. So that's kind of the context of where we are, why we care about stormwater. The more stormwater we get out of the combined sewer system, the less cost we have, and the better off we all are as a community with both preserving the quality of our waterways and avoiding future costs of constructing additional facilities and then managing those facilities to make sure we're in compliance with the federal and state governments. So Stormwater Management Group was formed, I believe, in July of this year, and we have a goal. Really, we want to lead the nation in stormwater management. We want to be the greenest city in America, and we have a unique opportunity in Detroit in that we have land. I like to use the context. You can fit the footprint of Boston, San Francisco, and Manhattan all within the physical footprint of the city of Detroit. We have a lot of square miles for the city of Detroit, and there's a lot of vacant land, which means a lot of opportunity to manage stormwater and continue to reinvent and reimagine that land in a different way. And we have a permit to make sure we're meeting the requirements of that permit. Now, just in case anyone doesn't know, the federal government sets the requirements of what we need to comply with, but in the state of Michigan, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality is the regulating authority. So our permit is with the state of Michigan, who is basically acting on behalf of the federal government. And we don't want to just build green stormwater infrastructure to comply with our permit. We want to make sure we're doing it in a way that provides all the other benefits that green stormwater infrastructure provides, which is beautification of the neighborhood, stabilization of our neighborhoods, wildlife habitat, all those other warm fuzzy, I call them, benefits that are really important to a thriving, healthy community. We have 3 main initiatives in the Stormwater Management Group. The one in the middle is basically our permit compliance of building green stormwater infrastructure in lieu of the $1 billion tunnel that was proposed along the Rouge River. So to back up just a second, I mentioned in the beginning that there's City of Detroit is about 95% complete with complying with the federal government's requirements for treating that combined sewage and stormwater. The other 5% is projected to cost another $1 billion. So DWSD successfully negotiated with the state to say, hang on, let's try this a different way. And so we're working on installing green stormwater infrastructure to manage that water and try and meet the permit requirements. So that middle prong there is really to meet our permit requirements that we're required to do. As part of that, we are under an obligation to develop a post-construction stormwater management ordinance. Today, in the city of Detroit, if you develop new or redevelopment, there is no requirement to manage the stormwater. If you go to any of the surrounding communities, there's generally a requirement when you're doing new or redevelopment. We are working on developing an ordinance to require new and redevelopment projects to manage stormwater. So I'll talk a little bit about that later. And then the other prong is the drainage charge. The drainage charge, the purpose and intent of the drainage charge is to basically, to recover the revenue requirement to manage the wet weather infrastructure. So when I say wet weather, it's when it rains, combine that with our sewage, all the infrastructure that it takes to manage that water is what the drainage charge is in place to recover that. And then there's the drainage charge credit program, which is probably how you all tie in when you're looking at doing vacant lot stormwater management. You can get a drainage charge credit for managing that stormwater. Our ultimate goal is to, you're good. Okay. Our ultimate goal is to remove stormwater from the combined sewer system. Again, the less stormwater we have in the combined sewer system, the less treatment costs we have, the less operation and maintenance, and the less additional money we need to spend on that additional infrastructure to get us to that 100% compliance. That's done through a variety of approaches, which I mentioned from the previous slides, so the drainage charge credit program. DWSD is constructing $50 million worth of green infrastructure. And then there's the post-construction stormwater ordinance piece. I think I covered this. This is just a visual of a combined sewer system. So when it's not raining, what typically happens is our sewage comes out of our buildings and then is directed straight to the treatment plant. When it rains and the system can't handle that, part of the water overflows to our local waterways, and we are required to treat that to a certain standard. So, why a drainage charge? Well, we are required by the federal government to comply with the Clean Water Act and control our untreated sewage, which is the wet weather infrastructure. And there's a cost associated with that. And that cost has to be recovered because it is a service that DWSD is providing. And how many folks know that the drainage charge is not a new charge? A couple folks. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. The drainage charge is not a new charge. It was authorized by the city's charter back in 1975 and was reauthorized in the 2012 charter. The reason it might appear to be new is that previously it wasn't a separate line item on the bill, so it was embedded within the sewage line item, and DWSD pulled that out as a separate line item to be transparent about all the different components of the charges on the utility bill. The cost recovery. So again, all that wet weather infrastructure that's already gone into the ground, we have to recover the costs of both the debt services and then the overall operation and maintenance of that infrastructure. And it costs a lot of money to treat a lot of water. Cost avoidance, like I mentioned, we're not done meeting our federal permit requirements. So the more stormwater we get out of the system, the less infrastructure we have to build in addition to what's already in the ground. And I talked about the negotiation with including green stormwater infrastructure to delay those costs, but I can assure you that the Michigan regulators are very much firm on making sure that we meet our deadlines and our commitments with the remaining infrastructure that's left. And then, so previously there were drainage charges are tied to a water service. So you might think, well, what happens to the folks that didn't have a water service? Think a commercial parking lot. They don't use water, they don't typically have a water connection. Well, what we found through our efforts and through a lot of scrubbing of the data is that they weren't being charged for drainage. So part of our program is to make sure that everybody is charged for the hard surfaces that they have on their property. And that's also to make sure that we're, meeting our Michigan laws that we have to abide by. We're providing a service and we need to recover that cost. So why are changes needed to the drainage charge program? Well, this is a really visual example for you of why. Through the data scrubbing process, we found, and this is not a typo, by the way, that one non-residential property owner was being billed based on the amount of impervious surface that they had. And their monthly drainage charge was about $9,500 a month. And yes, again, that is not a typo. Another non-residential customer that had the same impervious acreage was being billed for drainage charges based on the size of their water meter, which equated to $330 a month for drainage. So part of our program is to make sure that these two property owners who are contributing the same amount to the system are being treated the same. As I mentioned, there was about 22,000 parcels that we found because they didn't historically have water service were not being charged for drainage. So those property owners were one of the first in the implementation plan to be brought into the system to make sure that yes, indeed, everybody is being billed for drainage based on the amount that they're contributing. You can imagine that there are legal challenges. If you were customer A up there, I would be upset that I'm in the same class and I'm being treated differently. So when you are treating classes unfairly, what happens is class action lawsuits. So we want to make sure that we're not perpetuating that issue and that everyone is being treated similarly to avoid future legal challenges. Again, for our permit requirements and to avoid the $1 billion of additional grant infrastructure. Okay, drainage charges. By the end of the program implementation, every parcel will be charged based on the amount of impervious surface that they have. So the rate is basically how much money we need to collect divided by the amount of impervious surface in the entire city, and which today is $661 per impervious acre. That's a really important piece, that it's per impervious acre. So if you have 0.1 impervious acres, it's 0.1 times 661. If you have 1 impervious acre, it's 1 times 661. And yes, that's per month. If you don't know how much impervious cover you have, DWSD has a public parcel viewer that you can access. Type in your address and click on your parcel. This will be the screen that you see if you access that parcel viewer. And just like a regular typical Google or Bing search, type the address in the upper left corner, hit search. It'll zoom into that property. If you select that parcel, it'll bring up the information that says the amount of impervious acres that are on that parcel. And again, if you take that impervious acres, multiply that by the 661, that is the drainage charge for that parcel.
How do you get there?
I'm sorry. It's on DWSD's website, which is detroitmi.gov/drainage. Okay, so due to a limited amount of resources, time, and energy, and the amount of work that it takes to scrub the data and make sure that the implementation plan going forward is right, it takes a little bit of time. So we have phased our implementation over a 2-year period. It started in July of 2016. And October of 2016 is when, July and October is when the new parcels that had previously been billed were brought into the billing system and began billing. And then the city-owned properties were converted to the 661 per impervious acre at that time. And then industrial parcels were transitioned to the impervious area method in February. And then this summer, commercial and tax exempt. And then in July of 2018, residential and faith-based parcels will be transitioned. And at that point, every parcel in the entire city will be billing on the same basis. Okay, so 661 per impervious acre per month is really high. I'm not gonna lie, it's probably one of the highest, if not the highest in the nation. So one of the next questions I have is, well, how the heck do I reduce my charge? And there are a couple of ways. The charge is based on the amount of impervious cover that you have. The easiest way to reduce the charge is to reduce the amount of impervious cover on a parcel. That results in fundamentally a 100% credit on that area that got converted to a pervious surface. There are transition credits that are applied, and so there's a couple of credits that are automatic that happen, and property owners don't have to do anything to apply for them in order for them to be applied to their bill. Transition credits apply to the property owners that are going from that meter-based rate to the impervious area rate. The goal is to allow property owners time to prepare for that and budget for that change in methodology. So it's over a 5-year period, and the effective drainage charge rate is, in fiscal year 1 was 125, 250, 375, 500, and then it equalizes out in the 5th fiscal year to 625. Then there are residential credits, residential parcels, and residential parcels will receive a 25% automatic credit. Again, don't have to do anything to apply for the credit. It will automatically be applied at the time that residential parcels transition, so that July 2018. And the fundamental reason for this is that residential parcels typically have a lot more green space or pervious surfaces surrounding their impervious, which allows that impervious water to drain onto that pervious or the light fluffy area. Then there are community outreach credits that are available. So this is one that a property owner has to do something and they have to apply telling us what they did in order to get the credit. So it's not automatic. And what it is if a nonprofit wants to be a community advocate for DWSD. If a nonprofit wants to host an event and be a disseminator of information for us, there is a credit that can be received for that. That program, I believe, is supposed to be rolled out in public within the next couple months, not sooner. She's shaking her head. November?
I heard it was sooner, but I don't want to put you guys on that.
I think it's November 1st,
yeah.
But don't necessarily quote me on that. One of the other big things is we're calling it the Community Partnership Program, and DWSD will provide $50,000 as a 50-50 match to a property owner who wants to install green stormwater infrastructure. So say you have a project that is going to cost $100,000 and you don't have the money to come up with $100,000. DWSD will basically provide up to $50,000 of that project to help implement that. That program I know is expected to roll. The application should be coming out here in the beginning of November. Oh, you're good. Green stormwater credits I'll talk about more in a second, so we can go to the next slide. I already talked about the community outreach credits. So green stormwater infrastructure. There are three main components to the drainage charge bill, which you don't necessarily see. And so the credit program is based on two fundamental ways of controlling the water. One is reducing the amount of water that gets to DWSD's system altogether. So how would you do that? You would infiltrate the water, let the plants drink it, reuse the water through some sort of water reuse system with a large cistern. That is up to 40% credit eligible on the drainage charge line item of the bill. The second element is how fast the water gets back into the system. So maybe you don't have an opportunity to infiltrate the water for a variety of different reasons. Water reuse isn't going to work for your property. There's still a potential to temporarily hold that water on site and slowly bleed it back or feed it back into DWSD's system, and that's eligible for up to an additional 40% credit. So maximum credit you can get is 80%. The other 20% is because we have to have a system in place in case if and when you choose to connect to the system and there's a cost associated with that. The only exception to that rule is if you are one of the lucky few that are situated in a spot where you can have your own pipe that goes directly from your property that you own, operate, and maintain that goes directly to the river, where DWSD would never have to provide a service or a connection point for that property to tie into, and then that's where 100% of the drainage charge would go away because you're not subject to the drainage charge if you're not contributing water to the system. Okay, gotta go. These are the credit eligible practices. This information is all available on our websites. We'll keep that one. Starter guides. These guides, probably of interest to you guys. Again, DetroitMI.gov/drainage. There's a connection or a link to click on these. These are basically guides to tell you for any given storm practice that is credit eligible, the key information you need to know, the potential credit percentages, the typical costs, key permit things, key design and installation options, and the maintenance elements. DWSD has a program to offer site assessments. That is a 3-step process. This sign up is available on our website, or if you want to take a screen clip or write that down. What it is step 1 is data validation. Is the data for your property right? Did you sell it? Is the impervious cover not right? Yes, no. We'll work through that process with you. And then step 2 is we offer a face-to-face office hour, and what that is think about it as a brainstorming session to sit down with you and basically go over what is the potential opportunities green stormwater that you could do on your property and what type of credit might you be looking at. And then, depending on the complexity and the situation, DWSD may say, okay, we can send an engineer out to the site to actually do that assessment in the field and provide a report of our recommended green stormwater infrastructure practice. There are steps along the way. One of the key things is DWSD recognizes that it is an investment to install a green infrastructure practice. And so DWSD will sit down and do a predetermination meeting. So if you have a concept for your property and you want to know, what kind of credit is this going to get? Is it going to make sense for me to do it? DWSD will sit down with you and review that and basically provide the estimated credit that you would get if you went forward with that project. And then as long as you go forward with that project as presented, DWSD will honor that credit percent that that we discussed in the predetermination. This is the partnership program that I talked about. This is the process for doing it. Applications, we're telling publicly, are going to be available November 1st. The idea is that funding will be awarded on a quarterly basis. So every 3 months, projects will be awarded, and then if your project is not awarded, it will stay in the queue to review for the next quarter for up to a year. And that's it.